Yep.
All right. Got people coming in here. I'm just going to share this guy out here. You guys see that okay?
Yep.
See that
Looks
we will
good.
start 11:05. Okay, perfect.
Looks excellent.
Very good. All right, well, welcome everybody. I see we got a couple people coming in here. We're going to get started at 5 after the hour. So we'll just kind of let people funnel in. So how you guys doing? How's everybody doing today?
Good. Good.
I'm doing pretty good. Is it, yeah, going to be 100 degrees today. So looking forward to that nice fall weather down in Austin.
Beautiful. Yeah. Man, you guys are still there, huh? 100 degrees.
We had a little bit of a break for like a week where, it got nice, low 90s, and even got to like, mid 60s and whatnot in the morning and in the evening. But nope, now we're right back.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 97 in Austin. I'm out in New Mexico today. I've got a picture here of my little mule in West Mesa back behind the house I've got here in New Mexico. So nice little adventures back there. It's outside of Albuquerque, so think of Breaking Bad and all that fun stuff. Yeah, we saw the end of Better Call Saul. I thought that was a pretty good show. I liked it.
Yeah, I did like that. So now we want to, now I've got to watch Breaking Bad all over again because now I need to see all the things that I've missed, and see how it all comes together.
Yeah.
How about you, Chris? How you doing today?
Doing fine. Just multitasking, trying to solve problems in the world. I guess that's probably the best way to put it.
Unacceptable. I need all of your focus and attention on me, Chris.
Well, this is the
Yeah.
best part. This is why I'm excited today because just given some of you know my general job history here, but along the way in terms of end user computing, one of the questions that we often would get was like, hey, performance on the endpoint. And going back 15 plus years when virtual desktops or whatever merged, whatever. And so finally having tools like what we get a chance to see to actually find the ground truth. What is the actual issue? So I'm excited to see what is. I mean, just because I'm at a point now where it's like, if you don't have an analytics tool, you're guessing, you're just throwing stuff in the wind and you have no idea if it really is an issue with the endpoint. So
yeah, or the issue, the user calls and says, hey, my performance is really bad on Thursdays, and they open a ticket and it's like,
yeah,
well, what's going on Thursday? What's
yeah.
And then you send users home and now you don't control the network on the endpoints. And if there's, especially call centers, people working remote, right? I mean, not having that end-to-end visibility in the last mile or miles, right? Is, you're just running blind, right? So.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience in troubleshooting and figuring out as a configuration this or whatever like that, but I'm at a point now where some of that is beginning to get stretched. And the reality is you have great tools like what we're about to experience here that can help dissect through all that, because there's so many different moving parts and where's the right one to dig through. So, but yeah, that's what I'm excited about what we've got today. So.
Good stuff. Well, we're coming up to about a minute here, and I'll just kind of go ahead and jump into it. I'll ask you guys in a sec to make sure you're seeing the right screen here. I just got a standing desk, so my configuration's all kind of messed up. But I'm standing here thinking, how did I go this long without a standing desk? So nice.
I moved to the standing desk maybe about 6 months ago, and I swear I don't sit anymore, man. It's great.
Yeah, I've noticed when I'm on calls with you, it always seems like you're standing.
All right, guys, I'm going to stand too. Oh, wait,
there you go.
Adjust the camera. There we go.
All right, come on, Ron. Everybody's
Oh,
Amazing.
no,
doing it.
I'm a cyclist. I'm used to sitting on my butt and spinning my
right.
legs, so I'm good.
You know, here's the best part. Now I've also got this wireless decked headset from our friends EPOS. They're not sponsoring this webinar today, but they are an IGEL Ready partner, and the best part is I can go check the mail right now while Paul takes over, Patrick, and still participate in the conversation, even though you won't see me on video. But I am liking the standing up option. That's pretty sweet.
Likewise, Chris.
Don't pull a naked gun on us, man.
Yeah, easy. Easy there.
We're all friends here, boys and girls.
All right. Well, I don't know how to segue that, but we'll. I think it's time to kick it off, guys. So we'll go ahead and hit the next slide here. Chris, I'm also coming from an EPOS headset. Really good stuff.
Yeah.
So you guys see the XenTegra IGEL Workshop screen, just to be
Yep.
level set. Perfect.
Yep.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining. I think as you may have heard in our I guess pre-discussion here, we're excited. We're excited about this topic. We're excited to have an old friend on with us. I'll do some intros here in a second. But today we're going to be talking about a really great partnership. IGEL has what's called the IGEL Ready program. There's quite a few vendors, whether they're software vendors, hardware vendors that integrate or work directly with IGEL. And we have one of our favorites on today, ControlUp. And we're gonna, and just for anybody who, I see some familiar names in the user list, so thank you guys for joining again. It's always great to have you back. But just so you guys know, we do these workshops monthly. Generally, I'm joined by Ron and Chris. And again, I'll do formal introductions here in a moment. And we like to keep these pretty technical. So it's a nice type of community building type of event we've been doing monthly, where we have a lot of the same people, a lot of the same faces. We get a lot of good back and forth. So just so you guys know, as we go through this today, just a couple of things. We're going to have a Q&A box set up in Zoom. Feel free to ask questions. I'll be kind of watching that box. And as the IGEL guys or as Paul are going through their stuff, we'll just make sure that we kind of interrupt at a time when we can and throw the question out there. So we'll keep this nice and interactive. We're also going to leave some time at the end for some Q&A. So if you have if you don't want to be asking questions during, you want to just kind of take it in and then ask questions, we'll leave time for that as well. But let's go ahead and kick this thing off. So again, we're going to be talking about IGEL and XenTegra. We do this thing monthly. Just as a kind of who we are in the IGEL space, XenTegra. We are what's called an IGEL Elite Partner. And we actually have what's called a services specialization, meaning that we can provide IGEL services on behalf of IGEL. We're one of the handful of partners in North America who can provide that. So we've been kind of going through. We've been in the IGEL world a long time, and we're one of the top partners in the country, both in how much IGEL we basically sell, but also what we can provide and how much value we can bring to the IGEL customers who maybe you're looking for a partner to work with. As for myself, my name is Patrick Toner. I'm a solutions architect here at XenTegra. I spent about 4 years at IGEL before I made the move. And I currently live in Jacksonville, Florida. I actually just moved down here from Philadelphia. So that's been quite an adventure. I like to put the picture of my family here to garner a little sympathy from everybody right off the bat here. So quite a few mouths to feed here. And if you see the baby that my wife's holding there, it's my daughter Brielle. She was actually born in the process of selling our house, right in the middle of it. We bought our house down here in January, had a baby, sold our house up there, and moved down. So it was quite an adventure. But anyway, so I've been in the EUC space about a little over 12 years. Again, had a stint at IGEL. Before that, I was actually on the customer side, working in healthcare and industrial contracting. But again, a lot of VMware, Citrix, IGEL. And as you can see there, I'm a husband and father of 4. And when I'm not working, I like to serve in an addictions ministry. Just a great cause and something I get fulfillment out of. But yeah, so as for today, so that's a little bit about me. But let's talk about who we are. Who is XenTegra? And for any of you who maybe are on the call, maybe you didn't know, maybe you saw a link on LinkedIn that was posted by someone from IGEL or ControlUp, and you decided to join. Just a little bit about who we are. Here's a quote from our founder and CEO, Andy Whiteside. And he says, XenTegra was born out of a need for customer enablement and true partnership. And I think that's really the thing that sets us apart. It's the reason that I'm here. It's the reason I came here from IGEL. When I was working at IGEL, we had a lot of partners. IGEL is a 100% partner company, meaning IGEL will not sell software directly to a customer. They go through the channel, what's called, the partner community. And a lot of the partners that I've worked with in the past, and some of the guys on the call probably attest to this, a lot of them are what I would say are transactional, right? They show up, the IGEL sales engineer, the Citrix sales engineer do all the work. Then the partner shows up to transact the deal because it needs to go through a partner. So when I was at IGEL, I always enjoyed working with XenTegra because there was a difference. There was a real emphasis on true partnership. And we would call ourselves a VAR, a value-added reseller. I think the main thing that separates us is we like to say we're a VAR with a capital V. We really focus on value. We focus on what we can bring to the customer, doing a lot of things like even today, free enablement. We're really big on education, enablement, and really, we give a lot away for free to bring you value, right? In order to, to basically enable you and make you a much more informed and better customer. And then some of the technologies that we like to sell and talk about these are our core technologies. So again, everything we do is in the EUC digital workspaces arena. So a lot of the VDI, desktop as a service. So we kind of cut our teeth. Andy was actually a former Citrix engineer who started XenTegra about 12 years ago. And then outside of Citrix, obviously VMware is a huge partner, Microsoft, Amazon. So some of the other big ones, IGEL, Nutanix, ServiceNow, and of course ControlUp, who we're talking about today. We and just so everybody knows, we live and breathe this stuff. We're not just talking about it because we know the marketing messaging. We actually use these all internally, and we kind of eat our own dog food in that way. So it's really great. Our organization is pretty engineer heavy, and so we geek out on this stuff. We love it. So a couple of things we can do. Again, I mentioned we're a VAR, value-added reseller, so we do resell these different software platforms that I was talking about. But we also offer services. So if you need help, maybe something like a ControlUp or IGEL is something you're thinking about for your organization. We have an entire services division. Engineers on our bench that live and breathe this stuff. They know a lot of them are former customers or they came from the different vendors, so they know the stuff inside and out. But ultimately, the top one, we focus on just trying to bring the customer a solution. So we're not just trying to sell you something. We want to make sure whatever we're talking to you about is the best fit. That's ultimately the big thing. Couple of other things. Obviously, we do these different events. You can see all of our events, XenTegra.com/events. I'm actually going to be recording this workshop, and as soon as I get out of here, I'm going to jump on an airplane to go to a customer event tonight. So we're really big on these types of things. So you can go check that out, see all the different events coming up, and see which some of them in person near you, some of them workshops, webinars on Zoom. Again, webinars. So we do what's called Webinar Wednesday. So a lot of the technology partners, even IGEL and ControlUp, we'll do these webinars. They're a little bit more high level, maybe not as technical, a little bit, more marketing material. Hear from the vendor, hey, what's going on? You can check that out, webinars.XenTegra.com. We also do podcasts. Chris and I were actually recording an IGEL podcast we call IGEL Weekly. We recorded that this morning and then jumped over here to the workshop. So it's just another any major kind of podcast platform out there. You can go check it out. It's called XenTegra IGEL Weekly, is the IGEL one, but we have podcasts for Citrix, VMware, Nutanix. We actually just launched one for Amazon, AWS, so that's a pretty good one. But go check it out, podcast.XenTegra.com. Another thing we do that I think a lot of people who have known us a while don't realize we do is we do staffing. So this kind of goes both ways. We have people who come to us and say, hey, look, I have a need to fill. Being in this space for as long as we have, we meet a lot of talented people, and sometimes they're looking for a new opportunity, or maybe they want to relocate from somewhere like Philadelphia to Florida, or vice versa. So we can basically, you might have a need for your organization, and you're having trouble fill it. Reach out to us. We'd be happy to do it. Just have a conversation. It won't cost you anything to just talk to us about it. And then on the flip side, we've had people come to us say, hey, look, I'm looking for a new position. If you're in that role or in that position, by all means, reach out. We'd love to work with you, get you placed somewhere. Another thing we separate, this is definitely worth mentioning, we have what's called a free micro assessment. And this is actually free. It's not a catch, it's not a gimmick. We'll come in, we'll do up to 4 hours of our time. We do this for Citrix, VMware. We have one for IGEL. We'll come in and just take a look at everything you have in your environment, and we'll output it into a SWOT analysis of their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. That's something that a lot of I've been working with customers doing it with the IGEL micro assessments, guys who are very active in the IGEL community, who've been around the technology a long time. And the cool thing is, a lot of them are walking away going, "Wow, I didn't know that setting over there existed. I didn't know this was the best practice over here." So it's a really just good level set. Whether you're an IGEL expert or you're just getting started, it's a really good way to just kind of level set, and make sure your environment is in the best practice state. Another thing we do, this is actually not technically XenTegra. This is what it's kind of like a sister organization of ours. So Andy has another organization called Computers for Community. So basically, what Computers for Community does is, if you have old hardware you're looking to get rid of, rather than throwing it into the garbage, what you can do is donate to Computers for Community. And what they do is they'll repurpose that hardware with one of our 2 partners, either IGEL OS or Google Chrome Flex. And then they will they'll actually donate it to either the charity of your choice or a charity in need. So it's a really great cause. It's a way to not have so much old junk going into the landfill, and at the same time helping out a charity that probably doesn't have the means to buy a bunch of stuff. We'll support charities all over the world too. So it's a really great cause. You can check that out, computersforcommunity. I think it's .org. You should probably know that. But check it out. Just Google Computers for Community. All right, last marketing slide. This is a good one. We gave away a Ford Bronco last year, and we just announced that next year we're going to be doing the same thing. So we're going to be giving away a 2023 Ford Bronco. It's a pretty sweet vehicle. I think it's come a long way since I believe that was the one O.J. Simpson drove back in the day. So it's a much sleeker version. Looks really cool. Actually, one of my neighbors has one. Every time I walk by, I'm like, man, that is a sweet vehicle. So by all means, go on our website, XenTegra.com/Bronco-giveaway. You can kind of read through all the different rules. It's pretty simple. You just set up a little time with us, with one of our technology partners. You go through the process, and your name gets entered in to win this Bronco. So definitely check that out. Pretty cool. And speaking of giveaways, just so you guys know, at the end of this call, so hang out, definitely participate, ask questions. ControlUp is going to be giving away a $100 gift card to somebody who was present on the call, who participated, and then everyone who's kind of in that role is going to be entered into this sweepstakes at the end to win. So pretty good odds, probably better odds than the Ford Bronco. So definitely hang out, and hopefully you're the winner.
Yeah, way to make us follow the Bronco giveaway with a gift card, man. That was...
That's a good point. I didn't think about it, but maybe next time you give away like a Tesla or something.
Yeah.
Ramp it up. But yeah, good point. Good food for thought there for next time. But anyway, we're going to be talking about IGEL and ControlUp today. As I mentioned, I spent 4 years at IGEL. Just a quick story. I know Citrix has this hashtag Better Together. IGEL Ready, kind of in that same spirit. This idea that, hey, look, we're all in this partner community, this ecosystem, and a lot of times, if you're an IGEL customer, you might not have good visibility into what's in your environment. Maybe it works really solid for you. A lot of times it does, but you don't have visibility into what's going on. So just a quick story. Back when I was at IGEL, I was supporting a customer up in Maine. They were a healthcare organization, and they were having all kinds of session drops in their Citrix environment. They'd rolled out IGEL across the hospital. And basically what was happening is Citrix kept disconnecting. It was dropping, not everywhere, but in certain areas. And they had a new CIO. And of course, this guy was just like, of course, IGEL is the first thing the user sees. So they see that issue. They don't think, oh, it could be a network switch. It could be this. It's IGEL's problem. IGEL is to blame. They're the one, unfortunately, the first line of defense there. So this CIO was just ripping IGEL and giving them basically saying, listen, you got to get IGEL out of your environment. And the guys that we worked with, they didn't want that. They loved IGEL. They wanted to keep rolling it out. They wanted to standardize everywhere with IGEL. And so they were coming to us saying, look, guys, we have no idea why this is happening. We can't figure it out. Can you come up here? So, okay, we'll come up there on Friday. So Thursday rolls around. I'm actually at a Citrix user group in New York City. I see the ControlUp guys there. So it was Roger and Rodrigo. Shout out to Roger and Rodrigo if you guys are watching. And you know, I knew that this customer also owned ControlUp, so I'm talking to them. Hey, what can we do here? So we told them, hey, we're going up this day. They said, okay, we can get on the call at this time. We go up there. Of course, we bring donuts. We're trying to bring peace offering to get the meeting started appropriately. And you know, we're going through terminals and command line, trying to figure out what we can see, and we're just like stumped. I have no idea what's going on here. ControlUp jumps on. Roger from ControlUp gets on the call. In about 20 minutes, going through all the different metrics, they're able to identify, okay, we see that there's super high latency in this segment of your network. It seems to be happening at this time. And it was really cool because all these visual interfaces, they could see everything. We were able to figure out in about 20 minutes where the problem was. It actually, believe it or not, it ended up being a network hub that was on one of their floors in a network closet that they were able to kind of, you know, do some reporting and figure out, okay, where's this happening? They go in the closet, they find this thing. It was causing all kinds of havoc in their network, and solve it. So, you know, just in the spirit of what we're going to be talking about today, right? It's just so crucial, whether you're an IGEL customer or not, that you have visibility into your network, into your hardware processes, all these different things that a lot of times what's going to happen is something's going to break and the customer, your end user, is not going to care about what's actually going on. So it's great to have that visibility, to have answers, to have data to say, okay, here's actually what's happening. Now let's fix it. So very good stuff. So we're really looking forward to it. I'm going to go ahead and kick off some introductions here. I've kind of rambled on long enough, about 20 minutes here. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my other three panelists, some good friends of mine, everybody here on the panel I've worked with in the past at IGEL. Two of them who still work at IGEL, first being Chris Feeney. Chris is from North Carolina. He's been around UC about 20 years. Came from Imprivata, actually. I was his customer when he was at Imprivata. And then, you know, he's still kind of the Imprivata guy at IGEL. So anytime I have an Imprivata question, I go to Chris Feeney. Chris, how you doing, man?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to retire from that role, by the way. Sometimes you just can't get away from it. But no, all kidding aside, yeah, my venture into the world of EUC started when I came to North Carolina, which was just about 20 years ago, and I was in the world of the reseller, just like you guys are now. And so started with applications, and then it got into networking, and eventually got into the vendor space with a tiny startup up in Boston named Imprivata, and here I am today, years later. So, but as I mentioned earlier in the preamble when we were just chit-chatting, it would have been very nice, probably along the way, to save a ton of time if we had a cool analytics type solution that can really help you zone in on where the actual problem is. So I'm going to leave that for my friend Paul to talk about later, but I'll pass the baton to my buddy Ron. So Ron, introduce yourself, my friend.
Sure. Hey all. So yeah, I'm based out of Austin, Texas, and right now I'm in New Mexico. I got a picture of my little mule over here and the area back behind my place here in New Mexico. So, but basically, yeah, as the godfather of the CP store. So basically what we can do with IGEL is, you move your Windows stuff, right, to the data center of the cloud, convert the endpoints to be IGEL. But there could be use cases where there isn't stuff already built into IGEL, even though we have the great IGEL Ready Partner ecosystem, 120 plus, ControlUp, et cetera, is in that. But there might be use cases on a factory floor or something like that you need a specific, kind of Linux app. So that's what the CP store. So got that IGEL community. If you're not already, if you're looking at IGEL, go ahead and go to the IGEL community. Just Google IGEL community, and we've got a whole thing on Slack. I think there's about 9,000 members now in that community. But even for me, if I've got questions, as my dad said when I went off to college, if you think you know everything, you learn nothing. So I learn a lot of stuff here, and it's everyone I work with, Chris, Paul, and I work together at IGEL, and so everyone's super smart and super helpful. So it helps me. All right.
Yeah, and I think the title, "The Godfather of the Custom Partition Store," is a good one. It's stuck. I think All kidding aside, to Ron's point, and we did an entire workshop on this. So if you haven't seen it, go on to YouTube. We actually on the XenTegra YouTube channel, you can see all of our old workshops. But we did one with Ron where we walked through building a custom partition, all of that, and what exists in the IGEL community today around the custom partition wasn't there a few years ago. So kudos to you, Ron. It's just a great resource. Whether you might need Zoom or Teams or Microsoft Edge, all these really great tools. I know it's pretty crazy. Microsoft making applications for Linux. You can push them to your endpoints. And Ron has done a really nice job, automating that and then having great resources on igelcommunity.com to basically show you how to do it. So great stuff. Thank you, Ron. And last but not least, I want to introduce a good friend of ours. We worked with all of us at IGEL, Paul Bell, a very recent new ControlUp guy, I guess I would say. But yeah. Paul, go ahead and say hello. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. As Patrick mentioned, I did work at IGEL for about 5 years, and I've been at ControlUp for probably about 4 or 5 months though. But still all the love in the world for IGEL for sure. And that strong partnership is one of the things that made the transition from IGEL to ControlUp, really easy. And I had worked with the ControlUp product in the past. So yeah, this seemed like a good fit. Awesome. So definitely happy to be here. And again, what makes these things great is, I know some of you, looks like in the attendee list, some of you I don't. I'm not much of a slide person, and I like to keep things just pretty open and conversational. And I want you guys to get some good stuff out of this too. So if you have any questions, and Patrick, I'm sorry if I'm derailing things. If you have any questions, if you want to throw them in the chat window or raise your hand or whatever, happy to take those, as they come in.
No, that's awesome. And to your point, and to what Paul just said, that's what we want to do. We want to keep these conversational. We want to keep them really technical. So, it kind of pains me a little bit to have to do 20 slides in the beginning. But now that we're through that, we can now get into the nitty gritty, dive into it. So Paul is going to be jumping into that. One last thing I forgot to mention, guys, is as part of these workshops, everything we do, workshops, webinars, everyone on the call, you're going to be receiving an email from us. It's basically a survey. Hey, what did you like about it? I'd invite you guys, definitely give us your feedback, give us your honest feedback. If there's something you'd want to see on the workshops, let us know. I mean, we definitely want to keep this very interactive. We want this to be more of a community, not just some, platform where we're just talking to you guys and no interaction. I think it's just better to have that, open, similar in the spirit of the IGEL community, right? Sharing information, having great conversations, all that type of stuff. So with that said, just by all means, give us some feedback. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here. And Paul, I'll let you go ahead and share out your screen. And as I'm doing that, I see we have our first question that has come in. I see Douglas DeCamp is on the call as well. Good friend of ours, IGEL sales engineer. I guess I have to address this now publicly. So Douglas and I were in Philadelphia one time, going to different events. And I had my Honda Civic parked at a hotel, and we're kind of waiting. We're like, "Where's my car at?" We're waiting for this guy to come get our car. This guy comes drive. I'm talking in reverse. I think he was going 35 miles an hour. I didn't know it was possible. Like stops on a dime in front of the curb, and all of us were just like stunned. Like everyone was looking at me thinking I was going to get like furious that this guy did that, but I respected it. There was no damage to the car. I couldn't do that if I wanted to. So thank you for that question, Douglas. I'll put answer live on that one. And with that said, we'll turn it over to you, Paul.
All right. So again, I don't know if I can get feedback right now, but are you all familiar with ControlUp at all? If not, I'll start at a high level and we can dig down. But if you're all familiar, we can start deeper too. So that's fine. All right. So there's a few different areas that we play in with ControlUp, and we're going to talk about them all. Our primary goal is providing a great digital employee experience. So when you have your users, whether they're on-prem or they're working from home, ensuring that the users are happy, they're productive, and having the data to kind of quantify that is really helpful. I have multiple friends at this point, not necessarily in the IT software industry, that are looking for new jobs. And I'm quickly finding that any job that is really requiring them to come into the office on a full-time basis, so I would say over a half-time basis, is something that they're all kind of steering away from at this point. So again, I said I wasn't going to talk about COVID, but of course we have to, because what else are we going to talk about? Driving lots of changes over the past few years. But since that, since COVID and people working from home, that digital employee experience has really kind of taken a step up. And our goal is to make sure that you offer your customers the best experience they can have, and that they're happy with it. So where we started was around VDI and DAS. So when ControlUp first came to light a few years back, we were primarily focused just on Citrix. So monitoring the Citrix environment, getting metrics, looking at login times, things like that, being able to get very granular in what's happening within the Citrix session. Since that, we've actually broken out into physical endpoints, which is great. And that's why I'm here talking to you all about IGEL. So we do have capabilities around monitoring IGEL endpoints. In addition to IGEL, we can do Windows, Mac, various Linux flavors, and some other things like that. But we can get into physical endpoint monitoring as well. SaaS and web-based apps. So what we have is proactive synthetic monitoring. So we can do synthetic transaction against your published applications, against your SaaS-based applications, against different network components. We'll go into that a little bit. And then lastly, I shouldn't say lastly, unified communications. So I know we're using Zoom now. Many of you are probably using Teams or WebEx or whatever that might be. So really getting, minute by minute visibility into that Teams call or into that Zoom call, and being able to identify when a user has a particular problem, and be able to, automate or fix that issue, or provide insights to why that issue happened, or potentially even automate that issue if it's something that keeps recurring and you know what to look for. So we'll get into that. And then lastly, employee sentiment. We've got a way so you can get that real-time feedback from your employees regarding their session or whatever you may feel. So that being said, I'm happy to dive in and give you guys a view, but did anybody have any questions before I get in there?
No, I think, Paul, really the big thing here is around, this is when the magic happens, right? Is when you get the end users involved and they're working remote or at their father-in-law's house or whatever, trying to work, and the performance might not be good. Being able to get that end-to-end visibility, right, is kind of crucial, especially for the help desk and getting that first contact resolution real high, right? Having full visibility, right, is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And since everybody, or not everybody, a lot of people are working from home now, organizations have gone from supporting, 20 maybe branch offices or 10 branch offices to 1,000 or 2,000, because really everybody's home now is kind of considered a separate branch. All right, well, anyways, let's get into kind of all the good stuff. So what we are monitoring, and I'm going to just skip around a little bit, is we are really monitoring everything from your hosts all the way down to the virtual machines running on that, the user sessions, the processes, the data stores, the endpoints. If you're Citrix, you're running NetScalers, we can get metrics and provide feedback on all of these kind of things, and really help you trace back to, not only historical trends of what's been going on in your environment, but real time. We're updating our information every 3 seconds. So there are multiple places that obviously compete in this space with us. Nobody is doing it at 3 seconds worth of time. So what you're seeing in my environment here, focused on my host, is you're seeing real-time data coming into our console here. Now, the way we collect that data, and again, this is my only other slide, is a couple different ways. We do have a hybrid cloud solution, so very minimal infrastructure required on site. Most of the heavy lifting is done in the cloud. We're just setting up basically a data collector on site. And then we're connecting to these different resources a couple different ways. So for things like connecting into your Horizon session or your Horizon environment, your Citrix environment, like if you want to look at your delivery controllers, things like that, we use an API to grab information from there. Same things if you're connecting to Azure or AWS or something along those lines. So we use APIs in certain aspects, but then on the endpoints themselves, whether they be virtual desktops or IGELs or whatnot, we actually have a very lightweight agent that gets installed. Douglas asked, how much information can you see on a remote internet connection? I will answer that for you shortly, but very good question. One of the questions I had as well, because, that's pretty important, privacy. So again, we're going to make our connections either with APIs or with an agent installed on the machine. So we are in a live ControlUp environment here. So we don't have, sometimes I'm looking for issues that just aren't there, but luckily we probably can find some along the ways. So in a dashboard view, we're running 133 VMs. We've got 40 active user sessions. We can look at their average logon process and so forth. And these dashboards are all customizable. So if you want to create one that focuses just on user experience and look at these kind of things, throughput, protocol throughput and latency, you feel free to customize that however you like. If you want to look at, resources and things like that, take more of a stab at looking at, the machines and the hosts and all that, all customizable. So just want you to know that you can make this look and feel however you like, however you think your management would like, your help desk, whatever is important to you. But let's get into some actual troubleshooting and things like that. So let's say we have a customer, let's pop over here. Let's look at the whole environment. So let's say we have a customer that is calling up and they're reporting that they've got, we're going to pick on Citrix just because I'm going to pick on Citrix, but it could be ABD, could be, it could be Horizon, could really be, anything. But we've got a customer, a user that's calling up that's saying they're having a very poor experience with their Citrix environment. So what we can do is we can take a look at all of these user sessions. And again, these are happening real time. I've got people connected to the machine I'm demoing from right now is a Win10 box within Citrix. We've got people connected to, RDS machines, everything. But let's find a user here. Say my guy, Willie. Okay, so he calls up and he says, I'm having a ton of trouble. I keep getting, dropped from Citrix nonstop, or it's just slow. My user input, I press the key and I don't see anything pop up for 30 seconds. He's calling with some kind of issue. So from the help desk side, help desk can pull up Willie's session here and get an idea of what's happening on the virtual machine. So CPU looks fine. Memory is okay. We're not seeing anything really, any problems really going on here. We can see that he's connected to an MCS desktop, but everything looks good. So now where do you go for that or from there? They're having a problem. We don't see an issue. Well, ControlUp put out a thing called Remote DX, which takes a client device score. So Douglas, I think this is where we're going. So we're taking a look at latency, session latency, LAN latency, client Wi-Fi signal, things like that. This can great for BYO devices because this is really just a DLL, just an extension that you're going to install. So very non-intrusive, but when it is running, it is going to get you these metrics back to your resource that you're connected to. So you can see that Willie is having he said he's having a problem. His Wi-Fi signal strength is 76%. There is really no latency on the local LAN there. Latency to Google looks pretty good. So we're just doing a general internet latency. And the MCS box I'm connecting to is 64 milliseconds. So I don't really know where the issue is from there. But what I could do is I could further jump onto his physical endpoint now. So we're talking two agents when we're doing this. So Douglas, the first question you had, how much information can you see on a remote internet connection? We're going to just pop back up. We're going to look at all these user sessions. I'm just going to find one that's really bad too, just to show you. So this person who's having a problem, we can see they've got a ton of latency on their local LAN here, or not a ton, 75 milliseconds and 132 to Citrix. So in this case, maybe they are having a poor Teams experience or something like that. And we could say, well, you've got 132 milliseconds of latency. That's probably why you've got that bad Teams experience. The majority of it is sitting on your local LAN. And maybe that's happening because, you're running Hulu and, a football game came on or something like that. Now everybody's, watching that, or somebody's playing Xbox or whatever that may be. But it really helps reduce that finger pointing. So you could say, you know what, Mr. Customer, I understand you are having a problem, but, the problem is not necessarily mine. Here, this user has 55% Wi-Fi signal. Maybe we want to tell them to move closer to their access point, to their router. And we can even automate telling them to do that, and we'll get into that in a moment. But
Hey,
Douglas,
Paul,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt here. This is live and interactive. So I was just going to ask you, do you have stories where, I was thinking about from an ROI perspective, the ability for a help desk call to be resolved because you have a tool like this that can immediately identify rather than guess and look at log files and all that other stuff that generally is part of it. But to have something like this to say immediately, like, where's the issue? Oh, it's clear to me where it is. Any stories where customers have implemented this and been able to reduce like help desk calls or resolution or anything like that?
Yes, tons of stories around that. I'm going to give you an even better story about how we use this actually when I was at IGEL with a particular customer to help them save a bunch of initial money and then long-term money kind of with our solutions together. But yes, we do have ROI calculators, Chris, things like that. So you can actually go on ControlUp's website and start feeding in some data too to see what kind of money you may save. Hopefully that wasn't too consultative of an answer. But
very consultative.
I think it really gets to that. I think it really gets to that first contact resolution where the help desk could look at this, see it live, and say, "Hey, it appears our back end is working good. That latency coming in your home or wherever you're at is really, really high. And here are some options," or point them to a link on the company webpage to say, "Here are some options that you can look at to address home latency," right? And close the ticket.
Yeah, this is great because this is literally a screenshot. And boom, here's the problem. It's on your network, unfortunately, and it is what it is. So if we were working with this particular user, this Tabert person, we can take action right from the console here. Maybe we want to disconnect their session or send them a message or record their screen, or we want to interact with them somehow, if we think that can help, resolve their issue. But again, here, maybe that's not the case. Just because we did identify that primary problem being, on the local LAN, generating the increased latency to the PVS farm, giving that poor experience. So now to get these metrics here, this is our plugin called Remote DX. You can use this on corporate-owned devices, and you can use it on BYO devices. This is the information that you're going to get, Douglas. From this Remote DX, this is all you're going to get, and you're only going to get this information when they're connected to your resource. So whether they're on an IGEL running a UD pocket, they pop the UD pocket in, and you're just using this particular agent on it. As soon as they disconnect from Citrix, you are no longer getting this information, or disconnect from VMware. Once they're connected to your environment, you get these remote latency network metrics. But let's say that's not the issue, and we need to get a little bit deeper into these machines. Here, let's find somebody in here. I know I've got some IGEL users at some point, and we'll just jump right into an IGEL machine. How about?
Paul, we had another question come in as you're doing that. Asking how we aggregate the data from both agents to get to the root cause. I'm assuming you're going to show us that here, but that
Yeah, so there is some overlap with the two agents. So the same little nice picture I'm giving you with the Remote DX, that's kind of the very lightweight agent. So you don't really have to aggregate them too much, because if you are running both agents, you'll get both information out of the greater edge agent. So on the edge side, so we've got 41 machines in here looking at edge, or running the edge agent. So I've got Windows, Linux, Mac, we've got it all. So when the machine is running, now this is a completely cloud-based solution here. So you don't need any visibility or any line of sight to the machine from your corporate office. You're literally going to connect to your own ControlUp cloud-based tenant, and the machines are going to automatically connect to them, and they're going to remain connected to them via WebSocket. So if you have a distributed workforce, this is extremely helpful. So we can see everything on these machines from their location based off of ISP to their Wi-Fi signal. Again, if you're working from home, Wi-Fi signal, maybe it doesn't matter if a lot of people in Florida are having a problem, but think about your branch offices now. You could see an entire branch office maybe having a problem. But what I really like to look at is the network latency piece. So as you do have customers working from around the country or around the globe, this will allow you to see very quickly if a particular area is having a problem, or maybe a certain ISP is having a problem. And then you could dig down and really see what's going on in there. So we're going to pick on some of my machines here. So we're going to look at my machines that are in Austin. So again, being a IGEL lover and former IGEL employee, I have a lot of IGEL endpoints. So I've got 2 of them online right now. So we'll pick on this one right here. So let's say, for all intents and purposes, Willie or Tabat or whatever that user's name was that we looked at, we couldn't locate where an issue was, both on their home network or or on their virtual session, and we wanted to get into the IGEL and see what's been happening on that. This is where the edge agent comes into play. Douglas, the edge agent, you can see a fair amount on here, and by design, not creepily so, but you can get a lot of good information on here. So we're looking at, again, real-time data from today. We're looking at that endpoint, and we're seeing everything that happened from a resource perspective. So as latency, we set up 3 points for latency with edge. So we go to Google by default, and then you can set up a couple different targets as well. So we've got a NetScaler on ControlUp side, and we're hitting Cloudflare as well. So we can say today what my network latency was. If a user reported and had a problem, let's see, a little bit of a latency spike right here at 1:47 in the morning, maybe they called you and said, that's when I had my problem. Well, we can actually look at a trace route that occurred at 1:47 in the morning on that machine and see where that latency, problem happened. Again, here it doesn't look too bad, but again, we'll pick on somebody who's having a real issue a little bit later. And this data is all historical too. So if we wanted to look back and say, okay, well, I have a problem, I think as Ron said, on last Thursday. Okay, well, we can go back and let's go look at last Thursday, whenever that might be. Let's start digging in and see exactly what happened, either from that latency perspective or just from, a CPU or a process perspective as well. So we can really get pretty deep into what's going on the endpoint there. Now, in addition to the metrics, and this is meant in no way to replace your IGEL Cloud Gateway, but we can extend some support functionality to your IGEL or your Windows or Mac or Linux devices through the Edge agent also. So if you did find a need to remotely assist somebody, maybe you want to remote control that box, we can do that. We're not going to ask my user here for consent, but we can take over and we can shadow the machine, kind of like you're used to, with IGEL. We can gain access to a shell. But what's really cool is the actions that we can run. So Ron is the, what do we call him? The CP godfather, kind of, one of the best Linux scripters I know. So if you have a Ron or you're plugged into the community, or you just want to run certain actions against those machines, maybe from a help desk perspective, they don't have root access to the machine. You don't want to give them access, to the UMS or the UMS web-based dashboard. You only want them to perform a certain, number of functions. We can build those in. So when I was in IGEL SE, nobody ever wants to admit to not renewing their IGEL Cloud Gateway certificate on time, but it does happen. And when that does happen, it can create a challenge, because now you've got, sorry, I've got some people doing work in the house if you hear that. You could have, hundreds or thousands of machines that are basically not being managed right now. And that's just because the certificate expired. Or maybe you moved some users over to a new cloud gateway, and then you had a bunch of UD pockets that were out in the field that never got, configured to hit that new gateway, and the old one is gone now. So we could just add in a little task here that says, register with the ICG. So if they're running the ControlUp agent, we can hit that machine, we can unregister it from its existing ICG, and then we can re-register it. Maybe, you know, you're supporting a user and you just can't figure out something's acting wonky on their box and we don't know what else to do. We could go through and we can, you know, remove licenses from those machines. We can reboot, we can reset it to default. So again, anything you can script. And we do have a lot of actions built in. I kind of just like to nerd out on the custom IGEL stuff, but anything you want to script in particular, you can add that functionality to the product. Ron had an interesting one the other day. And Ron, I don't know if you want to kind of go into that, but
yeah. So basically we had, you know, they were converting some endpoints and it was an older, like Dell Wise endpoint, and the performance was bad on that on those devices. And so what we found was there was a command to basically look at you know, the CPU power and what frequency it's running at. So when I was talking to Paul about this, he's like, oh, that would be easy to do. I can go ahead and script that. And here's the output from doing the CPU power. And in this case, you could see, hey, you know, this device has 4 cores in it. And if you look in the middle frequency, you can see, hey, they're running at 1.3, 1.2 gigahertz, those cores. In this case, with that Dell Wise device that they converted, for whatever reason, it was locked at only like 900 megahertz, right? And so then there was another CPU power command that you could do to turbocharge it or get to the max. So Paul went ahead and just scripted that and added those items in there. So you could query those devices to see what the CPU frequency was running at. And then, yeah, back to you, Paul.
Yeah, so you really can extend the support capability, you know, pretty wide within the Edge agent, or within all of our agents, to be honest, but we're focused on Edge right now. So in addition to that, we can look at all active processes, installed applications, which on IGEL, you know, they should be pretty standard there. But if we went into a different machine here, we'll just let's pick on a Windows box of some kind. So we'll pick on this Windows box where, you know, the installed apps are likely going to be a little bit different. So we have visibility into that. You compare against other machines. We can see which patches are missing, which services are running, things like that. We can even see the top apps that the users are running. So how deep can the agent go? So getting into this top apps, this is kind of where we can really get into how your users are spending their time and what they're focusing on, and really hopefully help shore up license counts and things like that. You may find out that you're paying for a bunch of licenses on certain endpoints that just aren't being used. So right now we can see over the course, let's go back for the course past a month. We've got a handful of users in here, and then we can look at, based on each particular user, where their time is traditionally being spent. Maybe that was a bad user to pick on. Let's find somebody who's actually doing something. And of course, everybody I look at is probably a test user. There we go. So we can look at the users themselves and see where they're spending their time, within that environment, within that box, and so forth. In addition to that, tons of different reporting capabilities for the Windows side, for the Linux side, just to find out exactly what's happening on that local endpoint. Good question, Douglas. So with IGEL OS being a read-only OS that accepts files from the UMS, how do you install ControlUp agent on the PC and keep it updated? Very easily, actually. So both Remote DX and the Edge agent can be deployed through the UMS. So on the remote agent, where you're just getting that little window that pops up and says, here's your LAN latency, local network or local session and internet, that's just basically going to be a file that you push out. You could push it out through the UMS, or you could just do a UMS policy profile, which will reach out and download that agent automatically for you, installed into the right spot. And then we're good. So we're not worried about the read-only. We can work with that 100%. On the edge agent, where we can go a little bit deeper, we're going to deploy that through a custom partition, but you're actually going to download the agent from us directly, and we're going to keep it updated for you as part of the custom partition logic here. So we give you everything that you need to do, how to create that custom partition, which I'm sure you already know. If not, Ron has got a bunch of information on how to do that. And then actually with the URLs that you need to be able to download that. Now, because you are on a cloud-based tenant, you will have a couple things that are important to you, your tenant name and your device registration code. You just make sure you sub that where appropriate down for your initial action, and you're good to go. Right, I'm going to spend just a couple more minutes on the edge piece, and then we can kind of jump into more of the traditional, I'll say the traditional ControlUp console, the engineering console, and show some things around that. So what I get excited about lately is unified communications. So everybody's organization now is pretty much being run off of some sort of UC, and we can get, depending on the technology, we have Teams in beta right now. We have Zoom right around the corner, and I guess we'll call it beta, but a kind of late stage beta. These will all be GA very soon. But we can get you minute by minute information on what happened during that particular call. So up top here, where you see kind of the aggregate, we've had 230 calls this year. This is all in Teams. We're primarily a Zoom shop at ControlUp. How long it's taken. This is all API-based information. You can get this information from Microsoft. We're just putting it in a nice, easy to consume single pane of glass for you. But where the magic really happens is when we get down to the actual calls themselves and see what happens. So we're going to pick on the first one I see here that had a poor audio connection. The MOS score is basically an aggregate of just latency and things like that that can give you a problem. So 2.9 is not very good. But we can take a peek at this score, or at this call on its own. So we can see where the call occurred from. So we had 2 people in Florida calling each other. If we have this happened to be a peer-to-peer, if you're doing a Teams, like a meeting, then you'll see 10 or 20 or however many people connected to that particular call there. Oops, let me go back to my dashboard. And I think we're picking on this guy right here. Yeah, so we can see, not only where the call's coming from, but we can get metrics down to every minute that happened within that call. So again, API-based stuff up top here, 161 minutes from Devin to Ingrid. But when you want to find out really what happened, we can see, okay, he was on a wired connection. She was on Wi-Fi, 44% Wi-Fi signals. Okay, we can get information about the things they were using, headsets, things like that. But now when Ingrid calls up and says, my call dropped, it was just bad. I hate Teams, why'd you guys make me use this? Hey, Corey, it is not 100% API based, just so you know. Corey asked, since the UC portion is API based, safe to assume it also worked with VDI versions of the apps. Yes, so the API base is going to give you this. The agents are what's going to give you kind of the stuff that I like down here, the minute by minute call. So again, it's twofold the way we're collecting the data. So Ingrid calls up to help. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so Paul, so if I understand what Corey's saying, so basically, and I had the same question as you were talking through this, right? Mm-hmm. You're gonna have 2 kind of users out there that a lot of us would support. One of them being, I'm on a Windows FAT client, I'm running Teams, right? Yeah. And then, so if I understand what you're saying correctly, that's where this tool is going to be super helpful to give me all the Teams analytic data. But if they're running, Teams in Citrix and using Teams offloading, which obviously is a huge thing for all of us.
Yes.
Are you saying you need to use kind of a little bit of here, a little bit of there to get the full picture?
Well, so the API stuff's always going to be there. So you basically have to register this with your Teams environment. So you will always get the API stuff. So right now we're primarily focused on the endpoint, the physical endpoint to get this. But again, I don't ever want to talk future state and everything, but you will see this coming into Citrix, VMware, ABD. You will see this kind of information coming into that as well in the future. So right now, think about control 2 different sides of the house, 2 different agents really. one for the virtual side and one for the physical device side.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
So again, we definitely see that there is a need to get this on the Citrix side or the VMware side within the session, and that is something that's actively being worked on. So coming back to Ingrid, we could see that she had the call, she hates Teams, and, we could quickly just look for the outliers. Where does it seem like, she might have had a problem? Again, this is the caller side, the callee. And if we scroll down a little bit, we can start seeing where, okay, jitter is generally the problem that we have with unified communication. So we can see Devin, we're at 20 here, we're at 200 on this side. So at a certain point in time, the jitter went through the roof for this user at 752. So if she had that issue at 752, the jitter, the round trip time, we can actually dive into that endpoint, into that session, go back to the time at July 9th when that happened, and then we can take a peek to try to figure out why did she have that jitter. Well, let's look at our network latency. Okay, boom, right here, 752. Latency to the target was 833 milliseconds. To the internet, latency to ControlUp was 1800 milliseconds. So we can quickly start to figure out, okay, well, you had latency both going to ControlUp, both going to the network, the Google, just general internet side of the house. So it can help you put the pieces together to figure out, okay, well, Teams isn't really the problem. You had almost 2000 milliseconds of latency. That's why you had the bad audio call, or that's why your call was disconnected. That was the reason. That's getting down to that root cause. And if need be, we could, get into trace route information and stuff like that as well.
Cool. So Paul, we have another question coming in. I don't know why Douglas keeps asking this. How fast can your car go in reverse? No, I'm just kidding. He didn't say that. He asks, any chance, and again, this is probably more of a roadmap question. Any chance you will have either a Swagger page for the API or pre-built connectors for the API to integrate directly into Teams, Citrix, etc.?
Well, the API integration comes down into here, I believe, unless I don't have all the access to this, unified communication. So you can configure that in here. So your tenant ID, your app ID, your secret values and stuff like that. Same thing for Zoom. I don't have Zoom in this environment. Again, it's newer, but just everything I've said about Teams, just factor that in. Zoom is going to behave the same way, with the exception of with Teams, when that active call is happening, Microsoft doesn't provide the information back till about 15 minutes after the call ends. With Zoom, it's real time. So if you had a Zoom call, you could actually diagnose what was happening on that call while it's in place. But Douglas, yeah, we've got documentation. I don't know if we have a Swagger page for the API, but I could look into it for you. But you would have to configure your information in here to start. And then lastly on this section anyhow, user sentiment. So again, it's great to say we're doing a phenomenal job because all of my data tells me I am. But if the user doesn't think you're doing a great job, then that's definitely a problem. So this is in beta as well, but we are tying these all together. So you can see that the user is upset with everything, but or they're happy with everything, but then you'll be able to correlate this back to, their device in their session. I don't have any mock-ups of what, the future plans are like, but just think, whether we're on the edge side or whether we're on the real-time side where we're monitoring Citrix or whatever, you're going to be able to go to his page and it's going to show Patrick's face right in the corner there. And all the sentiment that he has, all of his things where he said it's good, it's bad, he doesn't like it. And then we can see every session that he's had, what the performance was like, and really give you a one-stop shop to see, is Patrick really having a bad time? Or is Patrick just a bad person in general, wasting all of our time? So
very negative, that guy. Very negative.
Right. So again, some of this is in beta, but I did want to kind of focus on, what's coming, just to whet the appetite for things that you may see helpful within your environment. So I guess we kind of started with a level 1 help desk guide troubleshooting a Wi-Fi signal and kind of moved into a whole other area. But again, we're unscripted and just kind of showing you cool things that I think engineers would like.
Hey, Paul, I got a question for you. And this is actually from a real world use case. I think I know the answer to this, but I just wanted to throw it out there for you to kind of talk about. I had a customer back in the day. Now, I guess this is before you had EdgeDX, and there was a he basically had developers in India. He wanted to be able to do real-time monitoring on, but he couldn't set up an SSH connection at the time. And back then there was a dependency. Can you kind of talk about, I know you touched on it, but what has changed? What, what basically how these agents can report up, what protocols they use, that type of thing. So I think that's really useful for a lot of, people who have that type of use case.
Yeah, absolutely. So the like the contractor, sorry, that was loud. The contractor use case is actually a great use case that I did as well, Patrick, with ControlUp and IGEL when I was at IGEL. So not to answer your question, but I did want to kind of talk about another cool use case that we had together. So we had a call center BPO. So they had customers all over the place, located in different areas of the world that don't have quite a robust infrastructure as the rest of most of the US does. So they had a big problem with turnover because they would hire these employees and then they just wouldn't be able to, perform the job. So they send them a thin client or whatever that was that they were sending them at the time. They would hire them, they would train them up, and then 6 weeks later they end up firing them because it's just not working out from a technology standpoint. So now you've not only wasted 6 weeks of time training this employee, but you've sent them some gear. That gear is never coming back because you literally just fired them, and they're trying to buy it off of eBay like after the fact or whatever that might be. So this problem was come to us. They were looking at IGEL because they wanted to kind of streamline that process, and they were going down the UD pocket route. So for their existing employees, they sent them a UD pocket configured to connect to their, virtualization infrastructure. It was running ControlUp. We could monitor those employees and everything was great. For new employees, they started to implement a similar fashion pre-offer. So they interview the potential employee. They say, "Yep, this sounds great." Okay, and yeah, at this point it was around COVID time, so hardware was scarce as well. So everything was BYOD. So they would ship them the UD Pocket. UD Pocket gets plugged into their laptop, desktop, or whatever. It's running ControlUp. Now, again, this is pre-employment. So they would have the user take some calls, perform the tasks, perform the steps. So one, seeing if the user, how they were on the phone from a, customer service standpoint, but in the background, they're getting all of the metrics, whether it was from Edge or just, general real time, if they were on the same network, things like that. But they were getting all that information back, and they'd be able to extend that potential employee a job offer, or not, depending on, the network connectivity, the resources they were running, and so forth. So being able to go back and say, well, you know what, your LAN latency is too bad, or your machine's not up to snuff, or something's just too unreliable. So there are ways that we have kind of used these two products together to really put together that, real money saving initiative, even pre-employment in some cases. Okay, so sorry, I meant to talk about that and you kind of reminded me. So now we'll back up. So there are two different ways that we can get information from an IGEL device. So the first one being, and I'm going to pop into a different console here. This is the engineering console. This is all the exact same information that we have been looking at, previously. It's just in the engineering console where we can do some cool stuff around automations and triggers and stuff like that. But let's go in and we can see, so machines running this agent, the real-time agent. So this is primarily in your VDI, but you can put it on physical machines too. This is actually built into IGEL. So the real-time agent is built into that. So if you have your machines, like healthcare is a great example, right? Most of your machines are on-prem. So we're not caring about managing them over the internet or anything like that. We just want to make sure that we get metrics on them, they're reliable, and we have some sort of visibility into them. So you can install that particular agent, or you don't even have to. That agent is installed, and you can just basically turn it on and add your machine into ControlUp. So you will have some capability of being able to take action against that machine, but it's going to be fairly limited into, you know, what you could do from a ControlUp standpoint with regards to the edge agent. So the edge agent is going to kind of embed itself in a little bit more and be able to get you some of those, you know, reports and things like that that are specific just to the endpoint, you know, patch management, stuff like that. So there are really two agents that you can run. The real-time agent is built in. The edge agent is something that you would install via custom partition. So Patrick, your remote workers. So as far as the SSH and all that goes, we're not so concerned about, you know, kind of the old school way of setting that up and doing the, you know, kind of all the custom stuff to get the agent on there. That's all built in.
Awesome. And I think, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but is the Edge DX from the endpoint, that's all going over HTTPS?
Yes.
You know, either 443 or something like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I mean, that's just huge, right? To have that access. You know, and it's funny, the customer I had at the time, that's what they wanted. They were like, if it was just over HTTPS, I could get that reporting, and now it's here, right? So now you have that feature. It's just a great feature to report up.
Yeah, and even though you don't, you know, you talked about shell, even though, you know, you still have shell access to that machine or SSH access, you would still have, you know, you could still remote shell into that machine too, should you want to. So we're doing everything over our agent through WebSocket and 443.
Great. Another question came in, Paul. Can you put this data up on an executive dashboard, and can you generate reports in XML, HTML, Excel, etc.? Finally, it's a three-part question. Finally, can you integrate the database into SQL SSRS for deeper analytics? So a couple softballs for you, Paul. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, and yes, but you may not want to. Okay. So yeah, Douglas, so again, the dashboards and stuff like that, no problem. So again, I like to bounce back and forth, and maybe that's a little bit confusing, but yeah. So all the data that we're seeing here in this console, where we can create those dashboards, absolutely we can do that. On the engineering console, you know, we can create different views and things like that, but the dashboard functionality is not there. Okay, so can we put it into SQL and SSRS? Well, we are a hybrid cloud solution. So if you go with us hosting everything, you don't have to run SQL or any of that sort of stuff, where you basically just run a monitor, a collector of where the agents are reporting into your on-prem agents, and that gets reported back up. If you did want to do an on-prem install, which again, if you need to be in an area-gapped environment or something like that, you know, I totally understand that. Yes, then you can use an embedded database similar to IGEL. You can use an embedded database, or you can tie into SQL, or do whatever you like. So cloud hosted offering, you don't have that capability. If you want to do full on-prem, you can. Obviously with on-prem, advantages and disadvantages, right? I'm going to say more disadvantages. With the cloud offering, we can offer updates much quicker. You literally just have to download a new executable, run your console as that, and, you know, upgrade your agents from the cloud, things along those lines. When you're on-prem, you know, you're kind of completely isolated and on your own by intent. So updates come out a little bit slower, a little bit less frequent, things along those lines.
That's great. I didn't realize you guys had both offerings, so cloud or on-prem. That's awesome.
Yeah, we do. Again, the on-prem is usually just in very specific environments where that's a requirement. I would always encourage you to go with the hybrid cloud solution if you can, but not everybody can.
Sure.
All right, so kind of nerding out a little bit and showing you what it's doing under the covers. How about that? So if we wanted to look at the agents, we monitor every process that's going on here. So I can tell you exactly what our agent is doing on all these machines. So it's not very intense. So the CU agent is what we do. If we want to look at all of our 136 machines that are running it, this is a data collector. This has a complete, well, it did as it moved. The ones that are spiking pretty high are these data collectors. These have a completely different job, not your normal, ControlUp, not just your normal end user computer or anything like that. But you can see for the most part, we're around 1 to 2% CPU usage. Memory usually between 40 and 70, depending on, so it's not very, very intensive to be able to get all of the information, or to run the agent to get the information. If you guys are running NetScalers or anything like that, we do complete monitoring via API into your ADCs. So we can filter down just by, one machine. Here, let's just focus on both of them. So we could look at, the HDX sessions, see where they're coming from. Again, goal is always give you that single pane of glass into everything that the end user is likely going to be connecting to. If you are on moving towards Azure or AWS or Windows 365, whether it's the business or the enterprise, we can monitor those as well. Either coming in through the Edge agent, if it's something like Windows 365, I believe the business where you're not domain joined, you don't really have any GPOs or anything like that. We just put the Edge agent, we treat it like a standalone non-domain joined machine, and we can pull information that way. If it's domain joined, part of your, traditional infrastructure, we can throw the Edge agent, the real-time agent on there and get you all that information as well as do automations and things like that. So in the AVD side, we did a couple little things that are pretty neat because we know everything that happens on the machine itself. So everything from the processes that are running, the users logging in, the sessions. What we did in here, we can, let's move back up. We can create different triggers and then have actions happen when that trigger is executed. So one of the ones we have in here is around WVD. So we have a couple of machines when we put them to sleep, right? Or when the machine becomes idle and we decide to put it to sleep. We've actually got a script in here, and I'll send you guys a blog post article because I know I don't want to talk too much about it. Where we're actually changing, right here, we're actually changing the disk from an SSD to a standard disk. So when the machine's not being used and it goes to sleep for the night, we're swapping the disk out. So what happens there is over the course of time, you'll start to see that, I've got two machines, they're exactly the same. One of them though, when I swap the disk out, it's costing me less every month now, because now we're using a cheaper disk when the machine's not in use. Therefore, we're saving money. As you know, putting your workforce in Azure and running those tasks or in the cloud in general can be expensive. But that's not the only thing we do. It doesn't have to be hardware related, right? So logon times are generally an issue for people, especially in healthcare. So what we have here is we have a script that can run that says every time that we see a logon duration more than 75 seconds, I want you to automatically run an analyze logon duration script, parse out all that information and add it to an audit log. I want to be notified every time somebody has a long logon. So again, we're just writing it to a log, but you could say every time this happens, I want to send it to a Teams channel or a Slack channel or something along those lines. So we can have somebody automate or somebody notified automatically. So using that example, we can go back and we could say, all right, let's look at all of our user sessions. And let's find, let's find a whole report here or a whole dashboard. Okay, let's look at our average logon duration. So brings us into our longest logon duration. This guy's got 195-second logon. We can see at a high level where the problems are coming from. So of that 195 seconds, we could see 59 seconds is group policy, 14 seconds is the desktop loading and so forth. But if we wanted to actually be notified automatically when that happened, this is what we're doing in our audit log here. So if we went and we looked up logon, so we're going to see every time that analyzed logon duration ran, and we can pull that information out. So this is likely a different user that I just randomly picked. So they have 167.9 second logon. You can see that 84 seconds of it was group policy. 14 seconds was the Windows shell, but then we can dig into that 84 seconds within the group policy. Where is that actually all coming from? WMI, 79 seconds. AppX packages, how long those were taken. So you can really get very granular into where that login duration is coming from, where the problem is, and then help triage it that way. So again, you can use this as a very proactive tool and do different automations. So again, we can automate the disk changes out. We can automate logon duration. If you can dream it up, you can pretty much automate it. If you know that in the Windows environment, when you use Chrome too much and it bloats and they start running into particular problems, we can set up if A and B are equal, then we're going to do C and we're going to whack out some Chrome temp files or whatever that might be. So I want to stop there to see if anybody has any questions or if I've lost everybody. It's always difficult, when you can't see the feedback from the users and the people. So
that's definitely for sure. When you're on these Zoom calls, it's not the same, right, as being in person. No, I think this is awesome stuff, Paul. I actually have one other question. This has come up from a customer I was working with. Is there any direct integration into something like a ServiceNow? As far as like an event happens, open a ticket, like kind of what you were just showing. Is there a way to do that
yes.
today? Okay.
Yeah. So we do have ServiceNow integrations, like formal ServiceNow integrations as well. But if you did want to just, and again, it doesn't have to be ServiceNow. Anything. Ooh, lost my connection. Let me come back. This might be a good thing to look at. Why did I lose my connection? So I'm actually gonna come back. You guys see my screen now?
Yep.
All right, cool. So what we could actually do now, if we want to, is we could probably dig in and see why I lost my connection. But it seems like it may be something on my end here. I have no control anymore. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna fire up a different box here.
Gotta love live demos.
Yeah, it's
never
funny.
fails.
So here, I'm actually going to connect to a different environment real quick, or same environment, just a different box. And give me a second. You'll be able to see the whole logon process now. So we do offer one-time passcode with regards to access to the consoles here.
Does this come from ControlUp Cloud? Two-step verification?
Yes. Yep.
Very cool.
You have to sacrifice a nano server between doing a live demo. So it's kind of funny, right? I have a Win 10 machine that I connect to as like my personal, cloud, my personal laptop, or my personal VDI session. And it's been acting up a lot lately. So I've been using kind of the generic MCS box that I'm on now, that hopefully you see now. And over yesterday, I did a bunch of work to my, persistent virtual desktop. And I'm like, I think I got all this worked out. I did a bunch of stuff yesterday and it didn't screw up on me at all. So I felt confident enough to demo from that today because I had a couple other tools on there, but whatever, we're back. So same environment. Patrick, you may have asked me a question and I may have totally forgot what it was.
I did. I was asking about the ServiceNow integration.
ServiceNow integration. Yes. So yes, we do have a formal ServiceNow integration, but what we also have is webhooks. So anything that you can use a REST API to connect into, you could do a webhook for that. Here, if we want to take a peek at, so we've got a trigger here when a machine is not ready for Horizon. Our solution is to send a REST API to this ServiceNow environment and let somebody know that, you know, this machine is down. So yes, not just limited to ServiceNow, there is a formal ServiceNow integration. But again, this could be Teams, this could be anything that you're using REST API for.
Awesome. Awesome. We also had more of a statement come in the question. This is someone anonymously said, you have to sacrifice a nano server before doing a live demo. So
Yeah.
for future reference. Yeah. Very good.
All right. And one thing I want to show you, a contractor literally banging on my door asking for money, just asking my wife if she could pay them. One other thing I did want to show you guys. And again, we still kind of are scratching the surface. There's a bunch of other things in the engineering console we haven't gotten to. But I do want to leave some time for questions and those kind of things. But that was Scout Bees. So the other pillar we had out of those 4 or 5 pillars are synthetic proactive monitoring. So there's different types that we can do for that. So anything from EUC-based monitoring to network to different applications, and we'll kind of walk through that. So on the EUC side, we're just going to pretend to create a Scout. So really what we're doing is we are launching little tests, login tests and things like that on the EUC side to verify availability of your Citrix resources, your Horizon resources, you know, whatever that might be. And we can launch these from a couple different places, a Cloud Hive or a custom Hive. Just think of cloud as we're going to host this, we're going to launch it. No, you do not have to enable any services for remote desktop. Just saw that answer come, or that question coming in. Nope, you're good. So on the Cloud Hive, you know, we're going to host this test for you. Custom Hive, something likely you're going to do internally or branch office or through a VPN connection or something like that. So we're just going to say we're going to go from Canada and we're going to connect to a NetScaler. We're going to give it a username, a password. If you're using MFA, like a one-time token or something like that. And then lastly, we're going to tell it, what do we want to do? We want to launch a particular desktop. We want to launch a published app, and we want to get notified when it doesn't work, or if something is wonky about it, or maybe we want to get notified if it does work, you know, whatever is important to you, and then how often we're going to do that. So if we take a peek and we look at some that we've already got set up. So this is an Excel test that we're running in our environment here. Again, sub this for virtual desktop or, you know, whatever you want. Basically, every hour, we are going to run a test and we are going to launch Excel from a cloud-based location and report back what happened. So at today at 11:03, the test occurred. We can see that it succeeded. This is what happened when the page loads, so you can see that as well. We can see how long the login took, where that, you know, where the time was spent at a very high level, and you can also see session latency throughout that entire process too. So you can verify, you know, that your XenDesktop is up and running, your Horizon is up and running, and so forth, and then get notified either by that email or webhook or whatever that might be that you have some kind of problem. So we can also do that on more network-based things. So let's look at IGEL, right? So what could I monitor with IGEL? So we've got a couple of tests here where we're setting up, you know, testing our UMS and seeing what that looks like. So for those of you that are probably already familiar, but within IGEL, within the UMS or the ICG, there are status pages that you could hit through via HTTP or HTTPS, and that'll report back that things are okay or there's an error or something like that. So that's what we're doing here. We are really just connecting into our UMS, and I am looking for the okay sign that things are okay. That's what the web page is actually going to report back, that that's okay. And we're doing it every 30 minutes. And then we can go back and we can take a peek at, you know, every 30 minutes, you know, what's happened. So we can see that, you know, we had a success over here and everything looked the way we expected it to. We're doing that same type of thing with our ICG. So we're doing the same type of thing with our ICG. We're periodically testing that one as well, and getting that information hitting the ICG status page. So you can extend the capability and that far, you know, kind of with regards to IGEL, but you may want to do something that's, you know, not even looking at a web page or something like that, we could do basic pings, trace routes, DNS lookups, and things that, you may find it important for you.
So,
And
so
then,
Paul,
yeah.
so Paul, question on this, on the Scout Piece feature. So, if I'm understanding this correct, would I have, if I was the admin in an environment, would I have like one IGEL device that's running the Scout Piece synthetic user over and over? How is that? How are we practically doing that?
Good question. I don't even think I talked to you about this piece, so not even a loaded question yet. No, so right now these are just running from either the cloud, or basically you're going to run a little installer within a machine on your environment, and you're going to run this test. But next iteration, or coming very soon, remember when we looked at Edge and we saw all the IGELs and Windows machines and all those agents, you'll actually be able to use those as launch points for these tests as well. So if you wanted, maybe a particular user who's always having a problem, they can never connect or whatnot, you could say, well, you know what? I want you behind the scenes to launch that Citrix desktop every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes from their machine, run that test from their machine while they're working. So you could say, okay, is it a problem with the machine? Like every 5 minutes I'm launching this desktop, behind the scenes, and it's fine, but you can't launch it. You know what I mean? So, so right now you're either picking cloud or, you're running a service on a box that's going to launch this. In the future, anybody who is in the Edge environment here will be able to act as a launch point for these particular tests.
That's pretty cool. I know obviously this is more of a roadmap thing, but I don't know if you have the answer to this, but is that going to be, resource intensive? Is the user going to be able to see you're doing that? What will that kind of look like, if you have any idea?
So as far as I know, it shouldn't be resource intensive, because again, if it is, we're going to be the first ones to point out that we're the ones causing the problems on the box. So they definitely don't want that to be the problem. Yeah, as far as the users not knowing and not interacting, that's the goal, is completely seamless.
Cool.
So similar to oh man, what was it called? The buddy update, right? So I have your buddy update in IGEL, distributing firmware, but nobody really knows that that's happening. Could be sitting on somebody's desk. Same type of thing.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
All right. And then the last thing I just wanted to touch on Scout Bees, and then I think I'm done talking except for questions, is we do have application monitoring as well, again, in beta. So doing things like monitoring Teams or Azure AD or Exchange Online, there are templates that you could load up to monitor these, which are cool. But looking at Ron, probably Douglas and a few others for this one, the shell execution is, to me, like kind of one of the coolest things. So let's say, you've got a homegrown app, or you've got a test that you want to run that doesn't fit into any of these boxes, but you know how to do in PowerShell. You could actually do a shell execution and launch that script from wherever, and that script is then going to, perform whatever test you want. But again, maybe you want to run it from different environments or on a frequent schedule, so you can actually leverage that as well. And I think I know there's a lot more I didn't talk about. I didn't talk about like ControlUp insights, and I'm sorry, Patrick, I don't remember how long exactly we have.
Well, we have more time if you want to go into it. If you want to open
exactly
up Q&A.
I have, yeah, but yeah, we could definitely get into that. But insights is our historical reporting piece. So again, we know everything that's happening on these machines, and we can quantify all that for you. So everything from looking at sizing recommendations throughout your environment. So this might be, when somebody asks you want to put this on all of your servers. Yeah, why not? Because again, maybe you have boxes that developers have asked, well, I need 32 gigs of memory and 6 CPUs and all that. But then you find out, you know what, you don't need any of that. Like we can remove 6 CPUs and 6 gigs of memory and we can be fine. So again, as you start moving more things to the cloud where this costs like a lot more money to run, we can make those sizing recommendations. We can look at just different trends in the environments. So looking at, computer trends over the past, month or the past year to see, do I need to start investing in more resources or things like that? All of these things can be, uncovered for you with up to a year's worth of retention. And again, using the cloud hosted versions, we're handling all this for you. So you don't need the reporting services and Splunk or any of that stuff to kind of get this information.
Very
So I
cool.
guess something like that, you could use that. You're going to be moving like the end users, right? They were on Windows, had a Windows laptop or whatever. You're going to move them into, AVD or Citrix or whatever. What's the right sizing for them for their VM, right?
Right.
And stuff. Would they be a good candidate for a multi-session type desktop or a full desktop, or the sizing for that, right? Part of
Right.
that.
Yeah,
Kind of inventory
absolutely.
way as you're moving them, right?
Yeah.
Moving the Windows into the data center or the cloud. Here's the sizing, and you looking at a certain user, and you could just say, hey, if I was going to move this user into Azure, I'm going to need, a lot of virtual CPUs and a lot of RAM. It might not make sense to move them, keep them on a fat desktop, right? But all these
Right.
other users, they're easy. It's an easy move for phase one, right? So.
And to that point, what Ron is talking about, another question came in. Can you automatically adjust the size of the servers in AWS or Azure? Can you do that built in, ControlUp says, hey, this thing's undersized, can it automatically adjust it?
So we can get pretty creative with that, but again, we are going to be more of your kind of day two. More of your day two tool for that. So yeah, there may be some other people that can, maybe handle some of those things a little bit different than we can.
Got it. So another question came in from Douglas. I think this was a little bit earlier. It says, are you limited to the GUI for the REST API, or can you use tools like PowerShell, Python, etc.? I think we're talking a little bit earlier about around when we were talking about ServiceNow. I think this one came in. We're talking about the API.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that, Douglas. I honestly am not sure. So yeah, I got to get back to you on that, my friend. But I appreciate you throwing that curveball at me. That was
Douglas has been taking it easy on you today, so that's good.
He has.
That's good. Well, cool. So we've got a few minutes here. Paul, that was awesome. I mean, I'm blown away by how much is there, right? I mean, with the multiple agents, and you're really just touching on the surface of a lot of these things. I mean, just how granular you can get, how much reporting you can get it's incredible. It's a really just an awesome, software solution. So I think, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know I've asked you questions, a few times here and there, and you're always, gracious enough to answer them. I mean, it's a really great technology. I'm glad you could get on today.
Happy to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's open it up. I know we've had a lot of questions as we've gone on, but guys, don't be shy. If there's anything you want to ask Paul while he's here, how something might work, throw it out there in the chat. We can kind of tackle it. And we'll sit here in awkward silence until you do it. So
this is where I'm going to ask Chris Feeney to lay down some funky beats while.
Oh yeah,
Chris, get the guitar out, man. Come on.
I'm a little out of practice, boys. Sorry. Too much travel lately.
Well, it sounds like you want to sing more of a blues song with all the travel going on.
Well, here's the deal, right? So all along I'm listening and catching up on some things, thinking to myself, I have yet to hear an example where Paul's product in a healthcare setting with Imprivata was able to figure out what the actual issue is on the endpoint. Do you have one for me? Please tell me you do.
Say that one more time.
Do you have an IGEL Imprivata customer where they're complaining about whatever, performance, speed, something, and your product being used to provide true analytics on what the heck the problem actually is?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any examples you could share? If not, I'm going to bring you into every healthcare account I possibly can.
Well, I think the big thing with healthcare, right, is just the login times as the clinicians moving around.
Yeah.
Adding an extra 5 or 10 seconds to every login is a big deal, right? So.
I guess the theme of today, based on the stuff that's coming across my plate, is, look, IGEL can repurpose a bunch of devices, but as you've seen here, if you don't have a tool to actually show what the user experience is or could possibly be, or where the problem actually resides, and you're trying to squeeze as much out of what you possibly have in your environment and kudos for you to do that. There will come a point in time when version upgrades or whatever it is, something happens where that device just is not going to provide a great user experience. But if you don't know and you don't have a tool like ControlUp to help you actually truly have the raw data, you can go to the CIO, the CTO, the CFO, the whoever, the powers that be, and say, here's the real deal. We've tried to milk these things as much as possible. It's time for us to consider some other device, and user experience is suffering because it's just cranking along, and that Celeron processor can only handle so much. It's time to graduate from lower school and go up to high school or college and get a Pentium chipset, or what is Pentium still around? Pentium.
Well, yeah,
sure are.
I think the other thing too is just those release cycles, right? So you're using software version 1.2, right? And the vendor comes out with, version 3. You want to baseline, test that and say, hey, what impact is that going to be to my virtual machines, for vCPU, RAM, the login times, all of that stuff you can test and come back and say, hey, this new version, this is going to impact our login times by 5 or 6 seconds per user, right? Over the course, maybe we don't want to do this release, or we want to go back to the vendor to address something before that goes, you release that into production, right?
Yeah. I guess the moral of the story is a tool like ControlUps and all the different things that you saw today, it's worth its weight in gold if it can help truly identify where the problem resides, and also help you make better decisions as you're planning for the future. And that could be anything. I mean, I used Imprivata accounts, right? Because that's where I lived a lot of time. But today, it's also the unified comms. That device may not be able to handle everything or get to a certain point, and then you're going to have to consider something else. So, it looks like we got some Q&A popping in. Hey,
popping in.
Yeah.
There's one question from Douglas. I don't even know if I should read out loud, but the second one from Peter came in. He asked this question: do you have a screen that can compare 2 endpoints configured identically, but one user complains of latency, the other does not see latency? So I'm assuming this is two users, same location, same configuration, all that stuff. I want to see them side by side and compare.
Yeah, so we could definitely do a little. Give me 1 second. Thank you. So we could definitely do some comparison on the endpoints, if you're looking around latency in particular. But let me show you something else too. And again, not the consultative answer. Thank you so much. Something I did want to show you guys. That's pretty cool. And now that came up, we're going to pop back in. All right. So everything should be configured the same, right? I mean, that's kind of what we always hope for when we go with these different devices and gold images and all that. But again, jumping into our engineering console and putting in the nerd hat on.
Yeah.
You guys okay?
And Paul, while you're doing that, Peter did add a little more context. He said, for example, users in a remote site that are rolling out IGEL converted workstations configured with Wi-Fi connections. The endpoints are receiving the same profile configurations, but one user complains of latency while the other one does not.
Okay, gotcha. So everything is exactly the same. And we've got one. So we want to do comparison side by side. Gotcha. Yeah, 1 second on that. So one thing we can do though is these are all PBS boxes. Now I was picking on them earlier. So everything built from PBS should, really should behave exactly the same, right? So in here, we can look at, different services, registry and all that. If we pick at the service or at the registry, again, everything is generally the same. But let's take a peek at services, right? So these are all Citrix PBS boxes. They all should be built the same, but we can see right off the bat, where services exist on certain machines, not on others. So this wasn't, and my apologies, this wasn't directly answering your question at all, but it just brought me into another spot. So there are some kind of underlying things that we can look at too, through the utility that aren't just, traditional monitoring, more, management and stuff like that, where we could identify outliers of machines that, one's experiencing an issue and one's not in particular. So going back, so there are some kind of exports and comparisons you could do, like long-term over machines and stuff like that. We don't have to look at, the entire organization. We can kind of filter out based on users and stuff like that. But the great thing about it is, again, you can create your own custom reports and so forth. So once we're into the web-based console here, and if maybe we're talking about Edge, maybe we're talking about Remote DX, where we're just seeing the latency and those kind of things. Yeah, you can do comparison. It may not be right out of the box where you can compare A and B, but we can manipulate those with like custom reports and things along those lines to see, why is this user having a problem when the other 5 aren't? Yes, Douglas. So if you were monitoring a service like Tomcat and it goes down, can it start it? Absolutely, it sure can. So pretty much the functionality that we get on these, kind of one-time off, starting, restarting services, clamping CPU processes, things like that, we can automate all of those as well. Yeah.
All right. So good stuff. A lot of good questions coming in. I know we're kind of coming up on time. Do a quick time check. A lot of us have hard stops coming up. Guys, if any other questions, we'll hang on a few more minutes here and answer any that come in, except for maybe some questionable ones from Douglas DeCamp out there. Actually, there was a question about your dog, Paul. Is there a?
So, I don't know if I have, but all right.
I already answered that. You can go next question.
So we went to
Douglas has used all those questions, by the way. Sorry, Paul. You want to tell the story? Go ahead.
I was going to say I can answer the long dog question, right? So we went to took a family vacation to throughout all of California. I think it was when I first started IGEL. So like we went to Carmel by the Sea and Pebble Beach and all these beautiful places. So I took this like really nice panoramic picture of like this most beautiful place I've ever been. But there was a dog walking through it. So in this like picture that I used as my background on my laptop for a while, and then I'm like, man, this is going to be like the nicest picture that we're all going to like frame. I'm a horrible picture taker. So the dog got stretched out like 5 feet or like 10 feet long in the picture. My son bent over during the time and like his head is laying on the ground and he's just like standing up. Like it's just this whacked up like, picture with it was like more like a 20-foot long wiener dog, I think that ran through at the time. So I still have the picture.
It's almost like it could be like an art exhibit. It sounds like, people can sit there and speculate about it, and very good. So there you go, Douglas. Sounds like the dog is still the same.
Yeah. While we're on this screen, again, I'll show you one other thing that's kind of neat. So we've been looking at it more from like a reactive, for the most part. The user calls up, they have a problem, blah, blah, blah. But maybe there's just a problem, right? So on this virtual host here, this wasn't alarming earlier today, but it is now. So we've got a VMware host that's under critical stress level. So basically these stress levels are determined by, everything's customizable, number one, but, CPU, IOPS, memory, things like that. So how we've got this configured, this guy's complaining. And it looks like it's complaining about IOPS, data store read write, and so forth. So all we know at this point is, there's a data store read write issue, but we don't know much else other than that. And it's affecting this virtual host. Knowing nothing else about it, within 30 seconds, I can show you where the problem is. So we're going to navigate to all the machines that are running on that particular host. So we've gone from VM host 3 to the 41 machines running on here. So it's sorting it by the ones that are giving me the biggest problem. So this RDS box here, we can see the disk reads and writes look pretty crazy. Sounds like what we were looking for. So from that point on, we could jump down. We could look at every session that's running on that particular box. So we've got one user on it. And if we look at that user, okay, obviously he's kind of the cause here. If we had more users, we'd see if we'd be able to quickly identify the stress level. We can look at all the processes this guy's running, and we can see what process he's running that's actually causing this host to complain that it's running hot. And then it's dynamo.exe. So again, we can record their machine, we can RDP to it, we can kill the process. Or as Douglas was saying, we could, again, if every time we see dynamo.exe pop up there and it starts getting a little crazy, we might say kill Dynamo and send that user a message that says we've killed your process because you're doing crazy things on there. We might say, well, this process in general, what if we just clamp it? So we just can't let it do as much. We're not going to stop it from running. So you can automate all these kind of things. Obviously, be careful with your automations because it is deliberate. You tell it to kill it, it's gone. It's going to kill it. But yeah, so there is a fair amount that we can do on the even on the reactive side here or the proactive side, depending on how you look at it.
All right. Well, I think we're. I don't see any other questions coming in here. So I think it's probably a good time to kind of maybe close this thing out. And Paul, this has been awesome. And to anybody on, if if this is something you're seeing and you're like, man, I need something like this in my environment. And let's be honest, right? It's we talk about all the time with the IGEL community being like the #1 tool in your tool belt. When you're an admin, and I'm preaching to the choir here, but when you're an admin and you have to answer to users, to your boss, to whoever, executives about the state of the environment, and if you don't have the data to go in there and at least say, hey, here's why this is happening, I mean, you're just at a huge, huge disadvantage as opposed to being able to gather this data, have reporting, show analytics. Hey, here's the data why this is happening, and here's what we can do to fix it. Just absolutely huge. So I would just say anyone who's listening to this, if this is something you're interested in, reach out to us at XenTegra. We would love to help you guys with this project and getting ControlUp, POC'd out and then proved out in your environment. So by all means, reach out, and we'd love to do that for you. But as for time, and unfortunately we're kind of up against it. So guys, any last thoughts here before we call it a day?
Well, I think the big thing is just having a tool like ControlUp to be able to kind of assess your existing environment before you migrate as well. Think about that. So if you've got you want to baseline where you're at, things like that, the user experience scores, all of that kind of stuff before you do your next phase or your next upgrade or migrations, right? Having that baseline view, and then when you do the migration or convert, then when the end user says, hey, my performance, I want my old system back or whatever, you could look and say, hey, your performance is similar after the change or whatnot. Or if there is an issue, understand what it is. Like maybe some new GPO policies came down that doubled their login time, right? You gotta know where to look to start digging, right? You can't just start digging and hope to find what you're looking for, right?
No, exactly. And again, I think we're all engineers, we're all data-driven people, and having all the data behind you, really can help sell your project, going forward and improve the efficiency and things like that. And I see we did have one more question. We have real-time data, or can we track past events? Yes, you can track past events as well. So again, depending on, if you're talking endpoints or if you're on, virtual stuff, we could leverage, our insights so we can go past up to a year or just different various events, whether we're looking at, something computer related or NetScaler related or logon duration, related. Absolutely, you can go back historically in time. If you're on the edge agent, the physical endpoints too, similar capabilities so we can absolutely go back.
So and I think for going back is you get a bunch of tickets on a Thursday or a Friday morning saying, hey, my performance, Thursday afternoon was bad, and a bunch of people said that. Being able to go back here and look at what happened, what's the root cause of that issue on Thursday afternoon, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, one more question popped in. Does Insights provide any information on pool sizing? For example, how many machines should I have in a machine catalog to provide compute for my users?
We're not going to give you that based on, so that part is going to be a little bit outside of the wheelhouse. So we can tell you historically, on the sizing, what individual machines are doing. But as far as how many, I mean, I guess I could say not directly, it's not going to. You'll definitely be able to see what your peak, what your session usage is, your peak, your peak concurrent usage. You'll be able to see all of that. But we don't have something that's going to say, based on your current, situation, you should really throw 50 more machines in there. So unfortunately, we don't have that, but you will be able to piece that together.
Right. But I think wouldn't you be able to show, though, these are the heavy users or the power users, don't group them, group them together, move, because you might have a bunch of light users that are really light on using Office, things like that, but you might have some users that have the Excel spreadsheet from hell, right? You wouldn't want to put all of those users in the same group. You could, sprinkle them around to, something like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You will get all of that information. Yeah. So again, it may not tell you exactly what to do per se, but it'll give you all the tools you need to make kind of the most informed decision for your particular, use case.
Right. How do you group users into these pools?
Mm-hmm.
You could have power users and light users and pull them together to maximize, the usage, right?
Yeah. And you may, and also like even with like machines, right? So let's say this RDS box that's running high right now, this could be a SQL server for all we care that always runs high, right? So you can adjust these specific metrics down too to say, well, I don't want you to report as high, when you're at 95%, I want you to run at 95%, don't report as having a problem until you're at 98%. So it is very customizable.
Okay.
All right.
Guys, great stuff. Again, thank you, Paul, for the time today and just going through all that. And once I saw you went to ControlUp, I was thinking this is perfect. We'll get Paul on here. We'll get the IGEL team together here. And so I really appreciate you taking the time. And Chris and Ron, you guys also, always appreciate it. Chris, I think we've been on calls together all day today. We did our podcast this morning and now the workshop. So
my day actually starts at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's when I can actually start
That's
working.
When you can start working. Yeah.
So I'm gonna be at IGEL Disrupt in Houston in a couple of weeks. So hopefully some of you all will be on there as well, or be there as well, and stop by and say hi.
And Chris, I think you missed the memo on we're all supposed to wear dark shirts today. So
yeah, sad day. I actually had a T-shirt. Actually, let me.
Well, I'm wearing my my uniform.
I forgot to wear this, and I'll just put it on right now. So Disrupt, we're blocking the T. Where's the? I guess they didn't put it on here.
At a different event, Disrupt?
No, yeah, sorry.
There you go.
Okay.
It was cut off there, but that was the shirt I was supposed to wear. But I do have that awesome shirt that Paul is wearing. I've got the other one too.
Yeah, I'm sure we've got more. So anybody who wants one, send a message. We'll find a way to get you one.
No issues with swag when it comes to IGEL and XenTegra and ControlUp. So
absolutely.
All right,
guys.
Always a pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Care.
Have a great one. And everybody out there, thank you for your time. And we love you guys joining and asking questions. Keep an eye out for that survey that's gonna be coming in, and keep an eye out for the $100 gift card because somebody has to win. Also fill out the survey for that Ford Bronco. Less of a chance to win that, but hey, you might as well try. So thank you, everybody. You have a great rest of the week. Take care.
All right. Take care all. Bye-bye.
Everybody.